Alright, we just got done doing fractions and percents. Now we're going to add decimals to the party. So what's a party of 2 people? We're going to have 3 people. Way better. All 3 are related, fractions, decimals, and percents. So let's see how they all tie in together. And again, we already did fractions and percents, so we won't spend a lot of time on that, although we will show you a new way to do one of those conversions now that we can use decimals. So again, percent is out of 100. So 24% is 24 out of 100. If I want to turn that into a decimal, all I'm going to do is divide by 100 on a calculator, or if you don't have a calculator, dividing by 100 moves the decimal 2 times. Alright, I want to move the decimal 2 times, and instead of having 24 where the decimal is here, it's going to turn into 0.24. It's going to go loop, loop right there. Okay? Let me change my line again. That seemed to work better last time. Alright, 7%. Put 7 on 100. I move the decimal twice. So 1 here. Oh, I got to move it again past an imaginary number, and I fill in a 0. So my answer is 0.07. 0.4, I put 40 over 100, and then I turn it into a percent. So it goes both ways. Alright, so if I can go from a percent to a decimal, I move the decimal 2 times to the left. If I go from a decimal to a percent, I move the decimal 2 times to the right, and then I add a percent sign at the end. So 0.05 is a percent. I move it twice, it becomes 5%. Okay, so here we go. Write each percent as a decimal. Well, I write the percent down here, I move it twice right here, they went loop, loop, and there's my final answer, 0.16. If you want, you should probably put 0 in front of it, so 0.16, but it is what it is. 9%, bring it down, I go loop, loop, I got to add that 0 in there because I made a loop past an empty space, and so it's 0.09. Alright, not too difficult. We're moving the decimal 2 places. The only thing that's tricky is am I going to the left or am I going to the right? So when you go from a percent to a decimal, your decimal should always be smaller than the number you start with. So 16 is what I started with, 0.16 is what I ended with. And now you can get in the habit of saying this is 16 hundredths. So that means it's 16 out of 100. This is 9 100ths, or 9 out of 100. And again, your decimal should always be smaller than the percent that corresponds to it. Alright, so here I'm starting with a percent. I need to end up with a decimal. Okay, and hey, look, there's a decimal right there. This is the number 1 wrong answer I get. Alright, this does not mean we're done here because there's a decimal. We have to turn this percent into a number, or a decimal number, that does not have a percent anymore. So I still have to move it twice. So does it make more sense for my decimal to be 0.007 by moving it twice to the left, or should I move it twice to the right and say my decimal is 70? Well, it's not even a decimal there. I mean, there is one there, but that doesn't make sense because this number, or my decimal, has to be smaller than my percent. So there's my answer right there. I should probably put a 0 in front of the decimal. Okay, so 0.007. This is 7 1,000ths actually. Alright, so I can drag these over here. This one's over 100%. That's fine. I still move the decimal twice, and I gotta get a smaller number. Okay, so I have to get a smaller number for my decimal, which means I move it twice to the left. It becomes 5.37, and that is my answer. Okay, 126, I need to make it smaller if I want to go to a decimal, should be 1.26. 0.9%, I need to make it smaller, move it twice, 0.009. Alright, so percent to decimal gets smaller. From decimal to percent, it gets bigger. So now I move it 2 loops the other direction. So 0.2, I'd go loop, loop. I got to fill in a loop right there. So now it's 20, and it would be 20%. So going from decimal to percent. So the decimal goes loop, loop, ends up at 20%. Here, the decimal's going to go loop, loop, end up at 384%. Decimal's going to go loop, loop, and end up right in front of that 5. Okay, right in front of that 5 right there. So it's going to be 0.5%. Okay? Same thing, guy press. I know I'm going quickly, but I think we can handle this. We're moving the decimal twice. You just have to make sure whether you should be getting bigger or smaller. So from decimal to percent, I should be getting bigger. Percents, or the numbers look bigger. So move it twice. They're actually equal, but they just look bigger. 1%. I need to make this bigger, 391%. Make this bigger. Still pretty small, but it's going to be 0.2%. Alright? So they all relate. We got to move the decimal. Here's what we did yesterday. We want each fraction as a percent. Maybe not yesterday, whenever we did this, but yesterday, I guess that's why I made the video, I want to turn this fraction into a percent. So what I did 5 over 8 is equal to something over 100. Okay? And then I cross multiply and divide, and that gave me my percent. So that's one way to do this. The new way is kind of that now that decimals are involved, okay, I now know if I take my numerator and divide by my denominator, that turns it into a decimal. So if you do 5 divided by 8, you're going to get 0.625. And then I want to turn into a percent. So there's my decimal. To turn into a percent, I move it 2 times. I want to make it a bigger number. That's going to be 62.5%. Alright? So 7 over 9. If I divide that in a calculator, even on using long division, I'm going to get 0.7 repeating. Move the decimal twice, it's 77, and around to 0.8%. 27 divided by 13, just divide it in a calculator. You get this long number. Move the decimal twice. So our top number is bigger than our bottom number. Our numerator is greater than our denominator. So I move it, it's going to be over 100%. If the top number is larger, it's going to be over 100%. 3 out of 400 is a very small number. It'll be 0.0075. I move the decimal twice, it's going to end up being 0.75%. Okay, so now we have that step. We can just divide the numerator by the denominator, move the decimal twice. That's what we're doing with these proportions, really. You know, all we're doing is multiplying by 100 to move that decimal twice, and then we're dividing at the end. Just different order now. Alright? So there's using the same thing, different method. Alright, let's do a word problem here to wrap up the day. Online survey. 1/5 of teenagers said their favorite way of communicating is email. Well, probably text message now. Oh, there we go. That's 21%. There we go. Is cell phones. So, and 0.15 favored instant messaging. Which of these groups is the largest? Well, we have a fraction, 1/5. We have a percent, 21. And we have a decimal, 0.15. Let's turn them all into the same way so we can know which one is the largest. They want them from the, they always want the largest, alright? And you might be able to see it right away. That's not an issue. But let's talk about making them all look the common way so it's very, very simple to compare. So let's turn 1/5 into a decimal. Okay? It's 0.2. 0.2 is also the same as 20%. Alright, so I can use all three of these. 21% as a decimal is 0.21. And 0.15 is 15%. There's nothing there. Okay? So here, they turn them all in percents. Yeah, 21%, 20%, 15%. Which one is the largest? 21%. Pretty easy to see when they're all the same type, I guess. So they're all percents. If they're all decimals, they'd be the same way. Usually don't turn them into fractions just because it takes a little more work, usually. Because decimals, you just got to divide. So I usually do decimals, but if you want percents, that also works. But yeah, 21 is the largest out of those. Here's one last thing for you to write down. I'll say this is optional, but if you have one of these fractions on a quiz or test or homework, whatever it is, I'm just going to say, hey, check the conversion sheet. We are giving you the most common types of fractions. These are the ones you run into the most. So if you want to copy down this chart in your notes and you run into one of these, you will know the fraction version of it, the decimal version of it, and the percent version. So if you run into, hey, what's 80% as a fraction? Boom, you know it right there. If you have, 66.6 repeating, boom, you have 2/3, or 0.6 repeating if you have the decimal by moving it twice. So this is kind of a shortcut chart. Just common ones you run into very, very often. It kind of saves you some time if you want to write this down. It's going to save you time in the long run, even though you have to put in a little time now to write it down. Alright. Again, that's all I have, doing basically the same thing we did the last section, but we're adding decimals to it, which gives us more options. And with decimals, we're either moving the decimal 2 to the left or 2 to the right, depending on which way we're going, from percent to decimal or decimal to percent. Okay, have a wonderful, wonderful day.